A Hacker's Teleology, Sharing the Wealth of Our Shrinking Planet, written by Charles Hugh Smith, narrated by Russell Newton. While it's natural to mourn the end of an era, no matter how unsustainable it might have been, it's energizing to enter a new era. While we don't know the future, we do know that the previous arrangement was failing even before the global upheavals. The unearned privileges of wealthy insiders had pushed unfairness and inequality to precarious extremes, and perverse incentives pushed overconsumption and debt to equally unstable extremes. We now have an once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to launch a new arrangement that works for everyone, not just a few insiders at the top of a corrupt heap. The previous arrangement, our socioeconomic system, for lack of a better phrase, was not sustainable, and so its demise was inevitable. To organize all of human life around the conviction that infinite growth was possible on a planet figuratively shrinking in resources was never anything but a vain fantasy. To organize the destruction of the planet in the pursuit of infinite growth so insiders could make even more money, that scheme was disconnected from reality. The solution will not be a grand ism that promises a utopian perfection that ends up enslaving us all, nor will the solution be some version of central planning. By its very nature, an arrangement that favors the few at the expense of the many, under some noble-sounding slogan. The solution will be a human-scale, messy infinity of opportunity to make incremental advances, one person and one step at a time. Not every step will be a success. Many will be experiments that fail, but since we learn far more from failure than success, this pursuit of small improvements in well-being and sustainability will be a form of progress that's open to everyone. This will require more than a new arrangement of people, capital, and governance. It will require a new set of shared values and a new definition of progress. Stripped of niceties, the old definition of success was, we must consume more, regardless of the destructive consequences, and borrow more money to pay for consuming more, because infinite growth makes everyone happy, and somebody somewhere, usually someone far away, will make fantastic amounts of money. Infinitely increasing consumption and debt was never sustainable, and consuming more didn't deliver the promised universal happiness. The corrupt values buried in this arrangement, which we can summarize as anything goes for the rich and powerful and winner takes all, were equally unsustainable. These values were artfully hidden by a vision of a utopian technological wonderland where machines and computers did all the work, and we luxuriated in their embrace, while the few who owned the wonderland became immensely rich. This too was doomed, for it was never anything but a shinier version of winner takes all. A more sustainable and humane definition of progress is advancing well-being and sustainability in small, incremental steps with fewer resources, not more, relying not on ever-increasing debt, but on increasing productive opportunities for the many rather than just for the few. Everyone who benefited from the old, broken arrangements will naturally try to restore the good old days of more consumption, making a few insiders even more gloriously rich, even as the tide has turned irrevocably against them. As a result, attempts to reform the system from within will be watered down by the entrenched interests trying to reverse the tides of time. They will fail to reverse these tides, but they will easily crush any reforms that threaten their feeding trough. To share the wealth of our shrinking planet, we need a hacker's teleology, a set of goals, tools, and values that work around all the old guard's broken systems to reach new solutions quickly and effectively. That's the goal of this book, to propose a new arrangement that provides a sustainable wealth of opportunities for all. The road doesn't always go where we think it will, but fortunately the lives we've led give us sufficient tools to deal with change, both in our own lives and in our global civilization. The option to not change no longer exists. The unsustainable era has reached its inevitable end. A new era beckons, and with what we already have in hand, we can forge a more sustainable, healthier, fairer, and more productive alternative. The blueprint for a more sustainable, productive arrangement seems obvious to me. But since many of its features are unique to my work, it's clear that this blueprint may not be as obvious to everyone else. Each of us has a wealth of experiences that are as unique as our fingerprints. These experiences are the seeds of our understanding and insight. Though life experiences are unique to each individual, the drives and desires that generate experiences are universal to all humans. We all want to belong to something larger than ourselves, to be valued, to contribute, and to fulfill our ambitions. Okay, Mr. Author, you ask, just how did your experiences lead to a blueprint for sharing the wealth of a shrinking planet? The answer comes from Steve Jobs' timeless 2005 commencement speech at Stanford University, in which he described how seemingly unrelated experiences gave him the tools needed to launch Apple with his friend Steve Wozniak. Jobs' point was that each of us shares this story. Experiences that don't seem connected, successes, major flops, dead ends, and everything in between, actually do connect up when we've assembled the experiences needed to advance. How our successes, flops, and dead ends all tie together is only visible after they connect. In Jobs' words, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. One way to understand Jobs' point is to ask, what experiences were absolutely necessary for me to advance from A to B to C? What advances would have been impossible if I hadn't had these specific experiences? For Jobs, one such experience was a calligraphy typography class at Reed College, a course that appeared utterly impractical at the time, but which led a decade later to the Macintosh computer's revolutionary menu of fonts. One of the unspoken lessons of Jobs' speech is that unconventional experiences lend themselves to unconventional solutions. Before Jobs co-founded Apple, no one could have predicted his astounding success based on his jumble of experiences, college dropout, working in an apple orchard, etc. Yet that jumble was, by his own account, key to his success in impossible-to-predict ways. This runs counter to the conventional track. Earn a college diploma, add an advanced professional degree, and build a career in a specialized field. Any counselor who recommended dropping out of college to assemble a jumble of unconventional experiences would be run out of town as a corrupter of youth. There is a thread connecting all of Jobs' experiences that he didn't mention: authenticity. In pursuing each experience, he was being true to himself and his enthusiasms. It wasn't a random jumble. It was guided by his inner compass of what inspired him. By his own account, he wasn't tending apple trees because he had to. He loved the work and returned to the orchard when the opportunity arose. All of us have experienced the rightness of being true to ourselves. Once again, Jobs' story is our story. None of our successes come from living someone else's life, and few advances of human endeavor come from dogmatically following conventions. Rather, advances come from people who have no choice but to pursue their enthusiasms with unrelenting intensity. They do this not because somebody told them to. They literally have no other choice. Which brings us to Jobs' final point. Life is short, so do you want to spend your life doing work you don't care about? In his words, the only way to do great work is to love what you do. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Conventions and dogma don't just distract us from our true selves. They also lead to getting things completely wrong when events don't follow the conventional script. The global financial crisis of 2008 and 9 is a recent example of conventional dogma being a catastrophically poor guide. Virtually all the highly credentialed economic experts got it completely wrong. Their models didn't reflect the financial system as it actually functioned, and so they underestimated the risks of contagion. As the wildfire spread to the entire global financial system, they continued to assure the public that the fire was contained and all was well. The conventional dogma failed, and by at least some measures, continues to fail, as the policies of the past decade haven't fixed what's broken. Many of us outside the mainstream recognize the risks of a crash were rising. It didn't require any special expertise to reach this conclusion. Those of us with real-world experience could see the system was broken, and doing more of the same was only increasing the risk of a breakdown. The current arrangement, our socio-economic political system, no longer works for the many. It only works for the few. It's broken, and while the mainstream holds that it can be fixed by replacing a few bits here and there and borrowing a few more $1 trillion, it's not just the rusty bits that are broken. The entire foundation is cracking apart. Even those who aren't versed in economics feel this in their bones. Those who are doing well don't see what's broken. From their perch, the system works for me, so it must work for everyone else. But when the foundations crack, even the wealthy and powerful will lose. The story of the foundations cracking isn't just my story, it's our story, for we all live in the same system. You've probably guessed that my experiences haven't followed a conventional line. Most of my life can be summarized as fools rush in. Short of training, money, and mentors, I've taken long shots, pursued impractical studies, and, predictably, made very little money. At 19, I received a couple $100 and a rusty Volkswagen Beetle in need of an engine rebuild, and that was my total starting capital. Here's my dot connecting. My experiences led me to ask big questions about how we can share the wealth of a shrinking planet and seek big, comprehensive answers. There's a word for the dot connecting Steve Jobs described: teleology. It's a fancy word that means where it all leads to. It's not just a goal, it's the destination we end up reaching, because that's where the connected dots lead. My teleology led me to ask, is there a better way to live? One that uses Earth's resources more wisely? What about our system locks us into such a wasteful, precarious, perverse, unsustainable way of life? Is there an alternative arrangement that would create a more sustainable, better way of life for everyone? And if so, what would it look like? In the context of computers, hacker refers to someone who breaks into a system with malicious intent. But the original meaning of a hack is a workaround in a kludgy system that we don't have the time or money to rebuild from scratch. Hence the term life hack for a handy shortcut or workaround. So when I refer to a hacker's teleology, I mean a teleology of workarounds in a kludgy system that can't be reformed because insiders have locked it so it can't be changed. This makes perfect sense. Why would those in charge risk modifying a system that's rewarded them so well? While the experiences recounted here are part of my story, this book is actually about our story, too, for we all inhabit the same planet, and all our experiences ultimately connect to the broken system we share. Just as there are dots connecting our life experiences, there are dots connecting the system's broken, that grinding doesn't sound good, parts, and dots connecting my experiences to my vision of an alternative way to share a shrinking planet. And just as there is a dot connecting teleology in our own lives, the hacker's teleology connects the dots of values, processes, and systems. Let's get started. This has been A Hacker's Teleology, Sharing the Wealth of Our Shrinking Planet, written by Charles Hugh Smith, narrated by Russell Newton. Copyright 2020 by Charles Hugh Smith. Production copyright by Spoken Tome Media. You need to hear this.